everybody, my name is Brooklyn, otherwise known as the Dramatic Otaku, and today we will be dyeing a hat with rich synthetic dye, as well as adding an embroidered patch for those who are interested in how to dye a hat, because I certainly was interested, because I was using it for my Waluigi cosplay. This does technically conclude my Waluigi cosplay, as I will be adding a few extra features over time, but this does technically conclude and is a second part to my Waluigi video from earlier in this week. For this video, if you want to follow along, you're going to need rich dye, specifically rich synthetic dye. You do not want to use the powder dye, which is for natural materials, for cottons and stuff like that. You want the synthetic fucking dye. Reason being is because of where we are sourcing our hat. Now, I did not make this hat because I didn't think I had the qualifications to make said hat, so I decided to purchase one. Now, I bought this hat from Shein. Now, before anyone gets on my ass, I did originally buy one from eBay, only to promptly get scammed. So, after me getting very angry and angrily messaging the owner, who has still yet to get back to me about that fucking hat, I decided to buy a Shein hat because it was the cheapest one I could get for specifically a Baker Boy styled hat. For some reason, you can't really get a Newsboy or Baker Boy hat very cheap anywhere except for Shein, so I bought this one for like $7, and yeah, it arrived. Woo! Not scammed out of this one. I will note, if you are making your own hat and are making it out of cotton, then you can use the cotton dye. If you're buying a hat from somewhere else, use the synthetic dye. That being said, I did have a lot of trouble with this goddamn hat even before I had done it. Like I said, I got scammed out of a hat, so I had to buy a new hat. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have to buy a specific kind of dye for a specific kind of fabric on this fucking hat. Do you think that I did buy the specific dye? No, so I got the all-natural dye when I was supposed to get the synthetic dye because the natural dye was cheaper, and I didn't read that it doesn't dye polyester and the fabric on the fucking hat is polyester. So, first things first is we collect our materials, that being RIT dye, and at this point in time, I couldn't locate the fucking hat. But we get the hat and we get the dye, and something very specific if you are dyeing a hat or any piece of fucking fabric is that you need a specific pot that is not for cooking food to dye your clothes in. I got a specific dye pot that you would have seen in my thrifting video. I got it for like $4 and it fit the hat. Usually you get like a bigger container for dyeing stuff that's bigger, but this was big enough for the hat. So the first thing that you actually want to do that says on the actual instructions, well, first thing you want to do is read the instructions, but the first thing that you actually want to do in terms of your hat is to wash the bloody hat. So I just put this hat in a wash with some clothes that needed washing for about a 15-minute wash. Don't put any fabric softener in, just whatever detergent you have, and then click go. Then after that was done and it came out of the washing machine, I then again washed it so there wasn't any lingering detergent, and I washed this in my sink. Yeah. Then what you're supposed to do is fill up a dye pot, your dye pot with liquid, and then bring it to a near boil. That's when you add your dye. Now, this is where it got a little bit difficult, because the bottle of synthetic dye is about 8 ounces. It says to add about half of it for if you are dyeing something that is, or if you're dyeing 2 garments of clothing, that being like, I think it was 2 liters, essentially, of fluid, but like, I am only dyeing one singular hat, so, I just kind of eyeballed it. You're also supposed to add about a teaspoon of dish detergent in when you are dyeing said hat. Then for the next half an hour, because it says for about half an hour to do this, for the next half an hour, I sat there and just poked it around in the dye bath. Now, I'm not sure if you're supposed to stay there for the full half an hour, because it did say to just sit and leave it there, but to make sure the water didn't boil, I had to sit there and poke it around. You have to be wearing rubber gloves when this is happening, and because I didn't have any utensils that I could use to put into the dye bath, I was using skewers and just poking around the entire time. Halfway through the footage, I do go to put on a mask, because I did have the flame hood of my stove on, but still there was a smell coming from the dye pot. Probably shouldn't have inhaled any of it, so I went and got a mask. And I opened all the doors in my house. Now that is probably just on my part because I am incompetent. Now after the half an hour was up and the hat was fully purple, I went and poured out the contents of the dye pot into a sink that was connected to my washing machine. Probably not the smartest idea I've ever had. Then washing the hat, switching between hot and cold water, going from hottish, warmish water and going down to a cold water. That's what it says to do on the instructions at least. So what I did was I just turned on the hot tap for a while, filled up the pot again, washed through the hat, then would put on a little bit of cold, and then did that progressively until it got colder and colder. Then, obviously, you have to wash it until the water runs clear. That is how your hat dyes. That's a little bit grim. After that was all done, I wrung the hat out with making sure it had as little water as possible, then hanging up for about 2-3 hours. And the only reason I hung it up for 2 or 3 hours instead of what I would usually do for just maybe an hour is because it doesn't seem like it, but it was fucking freezing on the day that I recorded this. And since it was a fucking freezing, it took significantly longer for this hat to be semi-dry enough to put through the clothes dryer. And something also of note with dyeing any object of clothing, it will appear darker when wet than when it is fully dry. As this is what it looked like wet, and this is what it looked like dry. I honestly really like how this turned out. If I had to do it again, maybe I'll do a second pass to make it a little bit darker, or maybe add more dye. But I still like how it looks, and it fits the aesthetic of my cosplay. That being multiple different types of fucking purple. Now for the second half of this video, this is how I made these Waluigi embroidery pads. Now, as you can very clearly see, they are too big for the hat, which is sad because they were really, really good. I'll probably hot glue these onto my shoes temporarily. That being said, I have to make more embroidery patches for this fucking cosplay. So let me show you how I did that. Now, I couldn't record this the first time, mainly because I use an embroidery machine. With the embroidery machine, you need to use an app, meaning I couldn't fucking film the process of embroidering, because if you exit the app in any way, it halts the embroidery process, so I couldn't film when I originally did it, and so I decided to film with my iPad this time. What you want to use is some purple, yellow, and white embroidery thread. These are different from regular thread, so get that out of the picture. I used white felt as the base. Now, what you should also add is some interfacing to stop it from wrinkling. Something that I fucking forget to make this patch for my hat. Now, I made the design for the Waluigi hat, or Waluigi symbol, by myself on a different day, and essentially this is what it looks like in app versus what's happening on the embroidery machine. When it happens, you have to stretch out the fabric for your embroidered patch, as well as the interfacing, and put it through the machine. As you can see in this footage, it is puckering. The fabric is puckering because I fucking forgot to add interfacing. Here is just an aesthetic shot of the embroidery machine. Isn't it aesthetically pleasing? And here's me fucking forgetting the interfacing. I forgot to put interfacing on it. But yes, as you can see, with the end result, there is a lot of puckering going on around the edges. I didn't think this would be my final product, so I didn't cut some of the threads. But after this, I had a huge fit at the embroidery machine because I had class in a few minutes. But yeah, so this is what my hat looks like with the big embroidered fuck. And here's what it looks like with the little embroidered fuck. No, I was not going to make another fucking patch, though I have to do that now. Then, subsequently, throughout class, I was sewing my embroidered patch onto my hat because it actually looked pretty good and does actually look pretty good. I hand-stitched this. I probably could have made it cleaner by sewing it with my sewing machine, but then I would have to figure out how to put a hat through a goddamn sewing machine. Plus, this way, the lining of the actual hat and the outside of the hat didn't get attached, so that I could, at a later date, maybe change the lining or maybe cut out the lining if it gets frayed or something like that. But yeah, so this is the final product of the hat. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yes, it does look a little bit rough, but after what I've fucking been through to get this fucking hat to look the way it does, it looks fantastic, wonderful, and amazing. Just like you guys for watching this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I upload every Wednesday and occasionally on Fridays at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you then. If you could please like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated as I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing day, night, weekend, afternoon. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!